Ultraman, a franchise that has always been part of my childhood. I grew up with it, I've played with some of their toys and games. Even during my teenage years, I would watch the old shows as well as the new shows, and with me becoming older, I was able to appreciate the story, writing, characters, effects, and action even more. Ultraman was a franchise that I truly loved. But eventually, even with all the good stories that the shows were able to give, I just don't think that Ultraman was a show that it used to be. I just didn't love Ultraman anymore. But just last year, my love for Ultraman came back even stronger than ever before with
Ultraman Z!
Not only do I think Ultraman Z is a good show, I think it's a great show. It made me feel like a kid again, and it made me love the tokusatsu genre even more. There are a lot of reasons as to why Ultraman Z made me feel that way, but before I talk about them, I just want to say that I honestly had a very bad impression towards the show's conception. I would rant more about it, but I just love this show so much, so I'll just put my reasons up on the screen. But my two major gripes with the show was that it was going to be another Fusion Ultra, which is an Ultraman using powers from previous Ultramans, but this time with 3, and that the main Ultra literally has a relation with Ultraman Zero, who at this point has too much going for him. But to my surprise, even with the show being part of the new generation, which had other reasons why I don't really like them, Z really managed to impress me, and there's a lot to love about the show. So let me tell you why Ultraman Z is great, how it made me love Ultraman again. Why? Now let's start with the first reason on why I love Ultraman Z, and that's the characters and writing. In terms of writing, the story is at first very basic. We follow our protagonist Haruki, who is part of a task force called Storage to protect Earth from monsters with their advanced machines. But Haruki is also Ultraman Z, the hero who comes and saves the day from various threats. Yes, very basic Ultraman story plot, but honestly the most unique thing about this show is that they use giant robots to combat monsters, similar to Evangelion and Pacific Rim. And we do get to see them doing pretty well against monsters compared to previous Task Force. We also got to see how naturally they improved the robots throughout the show, allowing it to have some sort of continuity while still remaining somewhat episodic. For our protagonist, Haruki, honestly, is one of the better protagonists in the franchise. Sure, he's your typical polite kid protagonist, the protagonist that does his best in what he needs to do, protecting the people he wants to protect, a person who faces everything head on, a newbie who's childish, makes mistakes, and doesn't know everything. Yeah, honestly, he's a very basic protagonist. Much like Haruki, my thoughts on all the other characters were that they were going to be a bit simple and quirky too. And the show already did give me a bad impression with Haruki, who always says Yuka, being the nerd,
怪獣のせいでここはある種の4次元空間になってるのかも。つまり正代幾何学の応用だね。この数値にイツキーの有限性定理を当てはめてってすっげえマジか。
and Yoko adoring Z. Yes, they are quirky and by no means complex, but their quirkiness never got in the way of the story. By no means are they complex, but their teamwork and camaraderie in their duty make up for it, which blends quite well with the story. By having a smaller cast, nearly every character feels like they have an important role to play, making the main cast feel like an actual team, which the show does really well. Yuka being the scientist, Yoko being the senior pilot who fights alongside with Haruki, Bako helping out as a mechanic, and Kuriyama being the head director of their team. All of them had their moments in the show, which moved really well with the episode's plot, because of how closely associated the characters are to the plot of most episodes. The characters feel more emphasized rather than just being background characters. And I especially love their relationship with each other. They all have such perfect chemistry and are so supportive of each other, making them feel like an actual team. Although I would want them to have more development, I'm happy with what the cast managed to get throughout the show.
こいつ乗りこなせるか？防衛ロボットを生かすも殺すもパイロットの腕次第だからな。
はい。
おっす。整備は俺たちに任せろ。頑張ってくれ。ありがとうございます。
Now back with Haruki, yeah, he's a very basic protagonist, but basic doesn't mean bad. It's what the character faces and how he handles the situation is what makes him a good character. And Haruki doesn't always have it easy. His actions of wanting to eliminate monsters while wanting to protect people in the earlier half of the series did impact him in the beginning of the second half, but his eventual growth of realizing both things are equal to consider is what makes him a mature and compelling character compared to previous protagonists. And later seeing how his views influence the other cast members truly shows his growth into a better character.
怪獣を倒すために戦ってるんじゃない。命を守るために戦ってるんだって。そう言ったよな。俺もな、命を守るためにあいつら作ったんだ。
Following Haruki would be our main Ultra, Ultraman Z. I initially thought Ultraman Z was going to be that hyperactive and annoying character that puts Ultra in every word he says.
Ultra Shock! Ultra 気合い入れていくぞ! Ultra Z! 急の言葉はウルトラ難しいぜ。
Gladly I was proven wrong, seeing how he doesn't often talk when he's in his giant form, which makes him more serious and similar to the TDG era of Ultra heroes, as well as the Showa Ultras, which made him more approachable with older fans. He's even one of the more memorable Ultras with his over-the-top catchphrase,
ご唱和ください! 我の名をウルトラマン Z!
His other forms, which represent the different eras of Ultraman, as well as his signature fly-off. Yeah, he can be a bit childish sometimes.
よし! こういう時は気合とボディーランゲージだ! おっす!
But Zet himself does get serious when dealing with problems that only he can help deal with.
なんだ? ウルトラ緊急事態だ. お前の体を借りるぞ.
Even with Zet being an alien, seeing him concerned and trying to understand Haruki's struggles makes him such a compassionate character, which makes their relationship stand out compared to previous Ultras. Having him, a sentient alien paired with a person who is clueless as ever with everything related to the franchise, makes such a good dynamic and unique relationship in the series. And I'm glad that Ultraman Zero, his supposed master, was only in the show for a short while. This way we're able to focus more on Zed, a new Ultra truly making his own story. Now for our anti-hero, Captain Hebikura. Reason why I left him last is because part of me wish he was an original character from this series. Now for people who don't know, Hebikura is actually Juggler, a character from Ultraman Orb. I was initially disappointed that he was Juggler, as I'm not a fan of bringing characters from a previous series, although I'm not really surprised as he was portrayed by the same actor. Sure, other characters from previous series do return, but they don't really impact the story of Zed in any big way, and only give vague references to their respective series. Anyway, Hebikura acted as a good balancing force in the show. The way he portrays two different characters was so well done. As Hebikura, he's a very enthusiastic and comedic captain that cares a lot and shows support to his teammates. But as Juggler, we can't really tell what his intentions are. Throughout the show, he helps our protagonists, he helps the antagonists, but sometimes he also just works for himself. And if you cut out all the moments where he was Juggler and only left the scenes where he was acting as Captain Hebikura, I would believe he was a completely different character. His interactions with the other cast as either Juggler or Hebikura were so different from each other, which makes us wonder which character are we really supposed to root for. And said interactions also help with building the events of the show, as well as make him a very mysterious character. Even without much of the character development that I would want, the show is still great with its stories that revolve around storage. where we get to see them improve in terms of how they combat monsters in each episode, which I'll touch on later. Sure, in the later half they halted the progression of the robots, but instead we get episodes that are personal to the other cast, as well as amazing callbacks to previous Ultra series, which all somehow blend naturally into the show's setting. And another thing that makes the show great is that it acknowledges that not all monsters we see are just mindless creatures. They're just big animals, some of which were treated poorly. Not only did the show's director address this issue from the original Ultraman by making it into an arc, episodes of that arc also had moments that felt real even for a kids show.
本当に怪獣を倒すことが平和を守ることなんですか？あの2体のレッドキングだって卵を守ろうとしただけです。ライデンも誰かに改造されて
卵が孵化して餌を求めた子供が街に出たら、
いや、それは
今この世界に怪獣の居場所はない。かわいそうだけど。
Serious issues similar to this has been tackled with ever since the first Ultraman show, but many people often dismiss that fact due to the show being labeled for kids.
怪獣自体が悪いわけじゃなくて、単純に人類がいるこの世界に現れた時に人類とは共存できない大きさだったり習性を持っているから倒されるんだって、本人が特別悪い意志を持っているっていうのはそんなになかったりすると思うんですけども、だからこそ人類側の攻撃を受けて倒されてしまうというその存在がやられる美学というか、倒されていく時の怪獣が最初は凶暴で怖いのに倒される時はどこか悲しげでかわいそうって思えてしまうような、そんな怪獣が大好きなので。
I'm glad that the director brought this to the story after mentioning about it just a few weeks prior to the episode's premiere, and managed to give these characters these moments to show that Ultraman doesn't take everything lightly. Not only did these episodes manage to change the tone of the show, but also managed to make it so personal for Haruki and even Z himself. Many still believe that Ultraman is a show meant for younger audiences that just has a giant hero fighting giant monsters with light-hearted stories. But even the older Ultra shows were not afraid to be mature, which the director himself was very aware of.
そんな怪獣が大好きなので、まあそのやられる時のなんていうか悲哀の最上級がジャミラのやられ方だったりする。あのシーンなんかはちょっとなんなら大人になってから見てもちょっと泣いてしまうようなシーンがあっていて、そんなこともあってジャミラが大好きです。
Sure, the effects are dated, but they never took away the mature and compelling storytelling as well as light social commentary that made Ultraman so appealing in the first place.
地球人が自力で怪獣を倒せるようになるのはいいと思うぜ。
でも Z さん、あんな恐ろしい力持つべきなのか。
それはこの星の人類が決めることだ。
I'm glad that the director was able to make Ultraman Z with the same thoughts as the original, making it fun, mature, while still being able to remain completely sincere.
ありがとう、ウルトラマン。
Moving on with the next reason on why I love Ultraman Z, and it's the concept of using giant robots. In previous Ultra shows, the Earth Defense Forces in most cases are pretty useless at defeating monsters until the later parts of the show. Sure, the members do have their moments where they shine, but they are just a distraction rather than a means to defeat them. Now, the idea of humans having giant robots to fight monsters in Ultraman is not new, but in Z, giant robots are the main source of defense to counter the monsters. Not only do we get to see how they improve, but also have the show commenting on the need for giant robots when they can bring more problems rather than solving them.
たった息だけで可能と言いますか、セブンガーには作戦失敗も多く、コストパフォーマンスも決して良いとは言えないんじゃないんですか?
And even with Ultraman always being there to save them, they still have a valid reason as to why they need them.
自分たちが怪獣を倒してみせます。
現状我々はウルトラマンがいるから怪獣を撃退できているに過ぎない。
だからといってあの兵器を使う理由にはならないんじゃないんですか。
ウルトラマンはな不確定要素なんだよ。もし彼がいなくなったら私たちはどうする？
And it's scenes like those that made me realize that the director has put a lot of thought into the writing, making them into plausible scenarios, which makes the show more enjoyable. Just by having this simple concept, every improvement the robot team manages to achieve feels earned, and slowly we do see Storage progressively improving their robots to a point where they fight alongside with Ultraman and even being able to beat the monsters, which is refreshing to see, especially in the later half, where they didn't even need Ultraman's help. Not only did they make the task force feel as important, but also make them just as great as Ultraman.
すごいですな、セブン側。Ultraman ですら穴に苦戦したゴモラ相手に大健闘だったんじゃないんですか。この調子でいけばいつの日か Ultraman 以上のロボットを開発することも可能なんじゃないんですか。
それでは
私の権限で必ず予算を出しましょう。
ありがとうございます。本当ありがとうございます。
うわー、マジですか？これでいよいよ。
Now to my last reason on why I love Ultraman Z. It's the respect and love for the Ultra Franchise and Tokusatsu. I'm not only referring to previous Ultraman shows, which Z has many similarities to, but also Ultraman's precursor, Ultra Q. Obviously some of the monsters are from older series, but I was also glad that they brought back obscure monsters from Ultra Q into Ultraman Z without changing much of their origin story, ensuring their stories are never forgotten. What's also nice to see are all the tiny miniatures in some episodes which are visually beautiful. Some of them by no means make the scene look real, but it definitely makes the scene feel alive. Some scenes being callbacks to the older series are also very nostalgic, and a nice touch. You can really tell that the producers really want to show their love for this style of filmmaking while paying many homages to the original Ultraman. The action scenes in this series are also one of the best the Ultra franchise has given us. Sure, some were awkward, experimental, and jarring, which made it look like a video game, but most of them were great to see, especially whenever the show makes you actually feel like you're watching giants fight each other, making the scene feel all the more real. Now, with all that I've talked about, do I think Z is a perfect show? No. Z is not a perfect show. I acknowledge that it may not be to people's liking, with myself not liking a few aspects of it. Some bits of the story can be a bit generic, basic, too comedic, weird. Z doesn't exactly earn his powers, the villains aren't exactly complex, some characters deserve more screen time, very repetitive transformations. Yet, the show managed to beat the highest grossing anime film of 2020, Kimetsu no Yaiba Mugen Train, at winning the category for Best Media in the Seiun Awards. And that award is something that Tsuburaya has not won since Ultraman Tiga, which was 23 years ago. And it's important to note that they did this filming the show in the middle of a pandemic and losing their main director during production. Ultraman Z was also mentioned by Nerdist as being one of the best shows in 2020, which was also the only one from Japan. It was also trending on Twitter with many people wanting more episodes for the series. Tsuburaya even rebroadcasted the episodes just after 1 year so that more people can still go ahead and enjoy it. But why? It's just a kids show, because despite all its flaws, Ultraman Z is still a great show to watch, and at heart, a huge love letter to the Ultra franchise as a whole. Ultraman Z is a huge step up for Tsuburaya's Ultra series. Not only was it rewarding for older audiences to watch the series, but also easier for newer fans to get into the Ultra franchise due to its simple but enjoyable storyline, making this show an extremely beloved show to all Ultra fans. It is a show that I ask you to watch and enjoy. Hey guys, I know this video is very different from what I usually put up, but it's just been something I've really wanted to do, as well as show my love for this franchise and show. I would have wanted to talk more about Ultraman Z, but this video is already long enough. If you want to show your full support for this video, drop a like, share to your friends maybe, And if you want me to make another video like this, drop a comment below and recommend me something to watch. I'm open to any show and movie, but it also comes down to if I have watched it or not. And if anyone wonders, yeah, I'll still be streaming, but just not as often because I'm in my final year of my degree. Well, until next time, see you!